75% of the people say that the military offensive in Lebanon is disproportional and inappropriate. And again, we get the same figures for the war in Gaza in 2008-2009. I would like to come to the last part, the concluding part, and that is about policy shifts that we have witnessed recently over the last year or the last 2 or 3 years, I would say. We see that in December 2009, the European Union has put forward what they consider a very strong conclusion, and that said that the Europeans would not recognize any changes to the pre-conclusion, but rather they try to mediate between the pro-Israel and the pro-Palestinian states. And actually, that is at least what they told me in Brussels. It was Germany who insisted that the sentence on Jerusalem was included, so the 1967 borders on Jerusalem. Also, when the European Union decided that they would not implement the decision to upgrade their relations with Israel, as had been decided in 2008, after the Gaza war, the Europeans said we're not going to implement this upgrade. Also, the Germans went along with this decision, and they have kept this line until today. We have also seen that Chancellor Merkel has criticized Israeli settlement policies in a very harsh fashion, unusually harsh fashion, in March 2010. That was when the Lebanese Prime Minister at the time, Saad Hariri, visited Berlin. Even more remarkable, I think, was this year's decision in February of Germany, as a non-permanent member of the Security Council, to vote in favor of a Security Council resolution that condemns Israeli settlement policies in the occupied territories. And at this occasion, the Germans actually joined ranks with the other Europeans, and they left only the US isolated in the Security Council. Now, this was remarkable because it was really the first time that Germany took such a tough stance, or German policies tough stance, in the United Nations. What is also remarkable is the statement that the 3 states made in the session at the Security Council, where they not only said that the settlements are illegal under international law and an obstacle to peace, but they also said that it is high time that the parties get back to negotiations, and they set up parameters for these negotiations. And actually, it was these parameters that they introduced there at the Security Council session that they wanted to have then as the parameters for the Quartet statement and for renewing negotiations. So it's about borders based on the 1967 line. It's about security agreements that would not infringe on Palestinian sovereignty, and would end the occupation, but at the same time protect Israeli security. It was about a just, agreed, fair solution to the refugee issue and the fulfillment of aspirations of both parties for Jerusalem, with a capital for 2 states. Again, all the 3 of them stressed that their goal remains an agreement on all final status issues and the welcoming of Palestine as a full member of the United Nations by September 2011. Having said that, the German Chancellor and the German Foreign Minister have maintained that what they consider a unilateral move by the Palestinians at the United Nations would not be helpful, and it would reduce the chances for peace, and therefore it should be the result of negotiations and not a move that is not backed by Israel. In fact, all the efforts that the so-called EU3, that is France, the United Kingdom and Germany, have exerted over the last month were to create this basis for negotiations based on the parameters I mentioned, but as I said, they haven't seen any success. One could also doubt that there was a chance for them to see any success in the first place. Their main aim, of course, was to avoid that the Palestinian leadership would go to the United Nations, that the situation would deteriorate because they associate directly a deterioration of the situation with the move at the United Nations. And of course, what they want to avoid is a split of the Europeans in the General Assembly or in the Security Council. At the same time, when we look at the domestic debate in Germany, we see that this stance that the government has taken has been quite strongly criticized. It has been criticized by the opposition, with the Left Party calling for recognition of the Palestinian state and for voting in favor of UN membership, and with the Social Democrats calling at least for considering all options, including recognition and UN membership, if negotiations would not succeed. The debate in which this was discussed in the German parliament, we also heard quite strong criticism from the Green Party of the official stance, but the Greens have not come out with their own parliamentary draft. I assume they will do so for the next debate takes place in the German parliament, which is scheduled to be on September 9th. So just very few weeks or even days before the motion in the United Nations. The other policy fields, I think, where we have witnessed some shifts, but nothing radical, is the question of how to deal with Hamas and how to deal with the Gaza Strip. Actually, the official no-contact policy on Hamas has not been reversed, but what we have seen is that more and more parliamentarians from all major parties, including the governing parties and including quite high officials, have met with Hamas representatives in Gaza, in Damascus, or in Switzerland. That should not be understood as an endorsement of Hamas policy. It should not be understood as a leaning towards or any understanding of what has been the line of Hamas in Gaza, but it's just the insight that the isolation approach, the no-contact policy, was really not helpful. The problem is that even though politicians understand that this has not been helpful, they have no clue how to get away from it. One of the problems, of course, being that in 2003 the European Union has put Hamas on the terrorist list, and so it is very difficult for them to engage in official contacts and to cooperate. So it hasn't really translated until now into a tangible policy shift. But at least what we see is a more careful European approach towards the reconciliation agreement and the attempt of the Europeans not to repeat the mistake that they have made in 2007 with regards to the national unity government. When we look at the Council conclusions of May this year, we see that the EU says we look forward to work with a technocratic government that is committed to non-violence and pursues a two-state settlement via negotiations. So this is a clear difference to former statements because it doesn't make a declaration on the quartet criteria a condition for cooperation. But it says basically as long as there is commitment to negotiations and the policy is a policy of non-violence, that is sufficient. In general, and I want to conclude with that, we see that